tonight, I love the fact that we are in a tabernacle and that it's Friday night, which means it's the beginning of Shabbat, it's the beginning of the Sabbath. And so I'm going to teach you 2 Hebrew words. I love my pastor in Kentucky. He says, if you don't know the answer, just look at the screen. So I'm going to teach you 2 Hebrew words. That's it. And I think you already know them. I'm going to say it, and then you're going to say it back to me. I'm going to kick off the night in the tabernacle by saying, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh my goodness, see, look, we're already speaking Hebrew together. That's awesome. I love it. Well, tonight I'm going to be, this is not going to be the typical talk that you have. I know how to do a sermon where you've got points and you reiterate those and you have certain, analogies as you go throughout. But tonight, we're going to follow the story of what I'm going to call the prodigal priest. A lot of you know the story of the prodigal son, right? But tonight, we're going to follow a bit of the story of the prodigal priest. Follow what God does. We're going to follow the thread of how God interacts with him. And then I'm going to show how God used me in many of the same ways that I identify with what he did with our prodigal priest. But first off, how many of you in here are parents? Okay, so many people. Okay, now you are probably a lot more holy than I am, okay? How many times have your kids done something and you look at your husband and you say, well, that's you, right? Or it's good, and they say, hey, baby, that came from you. I remember there's this one time we went to a playground, and my little son, Judah, he's my older son, he's the firstborn, and he likes to do everything just right. And my husband, who is a PhD student, likes to do everything just right. So we get to the playground, he's learning how to read, he's very excited that he can read, and he says, Mommy, where are the rules posted for the playground? Now, I am not like my husband. I looked at him and said, there's rules for a playground? I didn't even know that. So my little 7-year-old son is searching all over the place, finds the rules, reads the rules out loud. And I look over at my younger son, Joseph, who is currently breaking 4 out of 6 of them. And I say to myself, okay, that one's my son, because I'm more of the type B wild personality. And then my Judah is just like his daddy, and he does what he's supposed to do. Well, when we look at our story of our prodigal priest tonight, we're going to enter into Aaron and Moses have just come out of Egypt, okay? They see God defeat all the gods of Egypt. The sea is parted. We just celebrated Passover. The sea is parted. They come across on dry land. Now they're into the wilderness. And this whole time, Moses and Aaron are working together, right? Moses is the leader, and Aaron is under him. So right now, we're going to come into the book of Numbers, and we're going to see that Aaron gets his big chance to lead the people while Moses goes up on the mountain. So when the people saw that Moses was delayed to come down from the mountain, so Aaron's with the people, Moses is face to face with the Lord, he's dealing with the people, okay? And it says he came down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, up, make us a God who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not want to know what has become of him. So they literally just saw the most incredible miracles that had ever happened on the planet before. All of Egypt was defeated. And about 10 seconds later, Moses is gone on the mountain, and they're already stepping away from the Lord. They're saying, oh, this man, Moses, he brought us out of Egypt. And we don't know where he is, and we want you to make us a God. So they say, you would think to yourself, Aaron gets his first big chance to lead while Moses is gone, right? And we would think to himself, he would say, we just saw God defeat all of Egypt. We're fine. We don't need, Moses is talking to the Lord. He'll be right back. But the kids were all grumbling. And so what does Aaron do? He received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. This was an epic failure for Aaron. His first chance at leadership. Moses was gone for like a few days, and he's already agreeing with the people. So you're seeing no, this is your son. No, that's your son. No, you take the blame. No, you take the blame. It's very interesting what's going on in this dynamic. So Yahweh says to Moses, go down for your people, okay, whom you apparently brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. So now Moses finds out from the Lord himself that the people left alone have corrupted themselves. And then Moses said to Aaron, what did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them? And Aaron said, let not the anger of my Lord burn hard, You know the people, and they are set in evil. So the blame is going all over the place. Now Aaron is blaming the people. And Moses doesn't know what to do with him. The people are saying, God didn't even bring us out of Egypt. And God is saying to Moses, now these are your people. I'm so done with this entire dynamic. Then Yahweh sent a plague on the people because they had made the calf, the one that Aaron made. So God records in Scripture, okay, this whole mess that's going on right now. Who did what? Who's to blame? Yahweh puts his foot down, almost as like the Abba of this whole situation, and he says, the people sinned, but Aaron, I'm making sure you know, you're the one who made the golden calf. Aaron is supposed to have the priesthood. Aaron is supposed to be leading the people, and his first chance that he gets, he utterly fails. So what happens when the leader fails? What happens when Aaron almost gives a seed of rebellion within the people of Israel? Did he stop that? Did he say to them, no, we're not going to do the calf? No, it was God who brought us out of the land of Egypt? No, he fails in front of them. So now, in a sense, what are the kids going to do? Immediately after this, the sons of Korah come up and they challenge Aaron's leadership. They don't trust him as a leader. They know in 2 seconds, if they start to rebel, he'll do whatever they asked him to do. So they come up against him and they challenge that the priesthood belongs to Aaron. And now I don't know about you, but if this was like the third, the fourth, the fifth time that people were coming up against me, I might argue with them, I might get upset, I might enter into anger with them. But Moses and Aaron get on their faces and they intercede on behalf of the people. But God sends an earthquake. The first earthquake that we see in the Bible, so quite possibly the first earthquake ever, he swallows up the ground to take care of all of the people who are rebelling against Aaron's leadership. And he reminds the people that no outsider, only Aaron is the priest. Now I want to stop here just a second because to me this is very encouraging. Aaron grew up in the house of the Lord. Aaron saw the miracles of God. Aaron saw Moses obey and God answer. And he completely messed up when Moses was gone and he got his first chance of actually leading the people. He made the golden calf. And then when he was confronted about it, it's just like more and more bad character, right? And he's supposed to be the leader. And when he's confronted about it, he says, no, the people, you know them, they're evil, they made me do it, right? But God is so gracious. God is so gracious that when they got on their faces, he made sure that the rebellion, the earthquake, only captured the people who were with Korah. So you would think, okay, now are the people going to learn their lesson, this seed of rebellion that was unfortunately sown by Aaron on the mountain when Moses was gone. Is this finally done? They saw their first earthquake, and all of these people were swallowed up by the earth itself. But what happens? It says on the very next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of Yahweh. So there's just this ongoing blame. We're going back and forth. There's this cycle of rebellion and failure within leadership, and nothing's getting established. It's a mess, quite frankly. They made it out of Egypt, but this tiny little nation and this little people and these promises of God, where out of this nation is supposed to come a savior, the whole thing is at risk of going awry simply because of rebellion and bad leadership. And we can trace that back to Aaron's failure again back at the mountain. So God says, get away from the midst of this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And again, Moses and Aaron, they don't act in anger. They don't stand up for themselves. They get on their faces and they intercede for this rebellious people. And Moses said to Aaron, now this is it. This is where we're coming to. Moses says to Aaron, take your censer and put fire on it from off the altar and lay incense on it and carry it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them, for wrath has gone out from Yahweh. The plague has begun. At that moment, Aaron is getting his second chance. When Moses is off in the face of the Lord and Aaron is down dealing with the people, he ends up making a golden calf. And what happens? Rebellion and blame and rebellion and blame. There's a cycle going on. But in this moment, Moses and Aaron got on their faces. And Moses says, this is your second chance, kiddo. Okay, he didn't say it like that. But he said, this is your second chance. Go into the tabernacle and grab the fire from the altar, which, by the way, you're not supposed to do. It's supposed to stay in the tabernacle. And he says, grab the fire from the altar, run into the midst of a plague. People are dying left and right. By the way, Aaron, you're going to be all by yourself again. Moses is going to be back safe and cozy in the presence of the Lord again. It's not the best job in the kingdom. Every time Moses is in the face of the Lord and Aaron's dealing with the people. But this time, Aaron runs in. This time, Aaron is obedient and he gets a second chance. Now, I don't know about you, but Aaron had a lot of chances and a lot of experience with the Lord to see how mighty and awesome and powerful he is. And even in a position of leadership, he failed over and over again. In my own life, I'm going to share a bit of my testimony tonight. I grew up in the church. How many of you grew up in the church? I mean, so many, right? I've heard the most amazing stories today about people who have been here for generations, 3, 4, 5 generations in the Lord. I grew up in the house of the Lord, and my parents taught me to love Jesus. But there was another thing that was going on in my life at the same time, is that my older brother was severely addicted to drugs and alcohol. So growing up, I saw the Lord. I felt Jesus when I was in the house of the Lord. I would pray, and then I would see my parents serve, and then I would come home, and I would see my parents up late at night crying, where's my brother? And I would see them praying. People were praying and praying and praying for my brother Gary. And then what it looked like to me as a young 10-year-old girl, nothing was happening. And then things got really ugly, like they do with addiction. And there was the screaming at night. And there was the night that I was asleep in my bedroom and my brother's fist went through the wall because he was trying to punch one of my parents. I don't know. And then there was the time when the cops called because there was a suicide attempt. And so to me, I thought, I love God, but I don't think he answers prayer. So with me, there was this seed of rebellion and doubt, even though I grew up in a house that loved Jesus. And at the same time, it turns out, I say this with all humility, it's kind of awkward to say it this way, but I was really talented. So I was a ballerina, and I did classical ballet, and in my teeny tiny town in Indiana, I ended up in newspapers. I was in a classical company by the time I was 17 years old, and I thought to myself, okay, so my brother is in the newspaper a lot because of going to jail, all these kinds of horrible things connected to his addictions. And I thought, well, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm gonna love Jesus, but I'm gonna save my family because God doesn't answer prayer. So I'm gonna take the talent that God gave me, and if Gary's in the newspaper one time, then I'm going to be in the newspaper 7 times. And if I get perfect grades, and I was kind of anorexic, but if I look perfect, and I do all these things, I can make up for my brother, and I can save my family. And I will be the answer to the prayers that everybody else is praying. But then anorexia caught up with me, and I started fainting in class. And I got kicked out of my dance program. So what do I do now? I didn't realize that my identity wasn't actually in Jesus. My identity was in what I could do. So I thought, okay, new idea. I can sing, so I'll just do musical theater. So I had a new dream. I'm gonna do musical theater, and I'm gonna go to Hollywood. I was very grounded. I was just gonna go to Hollywood and be a movie star, because that's so easy, right? I'll just move to LA and be a movie star. That was my big idea. So I left school, and I moved to LA, and I thought I had made it. I mean, I'm this girl from this small town in Indiana, and all of a sudden, I'm in Beverly Hills. One thing after another, I get this job working at Saks Fifth Avenue in Beverly Hills. I'm doing fashion and merchandising. I'm meeting movie stars and rock stars, and quite frankly, I just started to party. I started to dance with the devil, and I thought I was having so much fun. But deep down inside, I still had that part of me that only God could touch. And so one day I'm on the beach in LA, I'm making tons of money, I have this crazy party lifestyle, all these famous people, and I hear this voice say, hey Jamie, and I turn around and oh no, this girl from my really conservative Christian high school, Amanda, is in LA. And I thought, ugh, what is she doing here? I mean, I was so impressed with myself, you guys. I was such a terrible person. I thought I was so cool and all these things of the world. And I see Amanda, and I literally want to run the other way. She's so conservative, and she's so goody two-shoes. And I was like, I don't want anyone in LA to even see me with this girl. How did she find me on a beach in LA? I have no idea, except that we know it was the Lord. It was a divine encounter. So I see Amanda, and she says, Jamie, let's go out to dinner. I'm thinking, yeah, sure, no way. I'm too cool and important for that. I'm so full of myself at this point in my life. And I make plans with 3 other people, and I say, sure, I'll call you. When it's in LA, I'll call you. I wasn't going to call her. And that night, 3 people canceled on me. And I'm all dressed up, and I've got nothing else to do. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll call Amanda. And I thought, well, I'll take Amanda out and I'll show her how awesome I am and all this stuff I've done in LA now, and I'll tell her all my stories and she'll be so impressed, and that'll be fun. So I go out with Amanda in LA to this really fancy restaurant, and she was so annoyingly happy. She was so content with her life. She's telling me all about this church she works for now in Chicago and how she's doing children's ministry. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't think of anything more boring than doing children's ministry in the basement of a small church back home in Chicago. And then she's telling me about how she loves her life and seeing kids change and seeing their parents change. And I noticed there was something different about Amanda. She actually made eye contact with me. She wasn't looking over her shoulder for someone bigger or better. She actually saw value in me. And unlike everyone I knew who was in the industry at the time, there are great people and there are believers in the industry. Hear me that way. You can serve God there. I just wasn't. And so I hear her talking about her life and how fulfilling it is. And then I see that the people I know are all self-medicating with drugs and alcohol and all the things of the world, and it's not filling that gap. So I say goodbye to Amanda thinking I'll never see her again. She goes back to Chicago, I'm in LA. But Amanda went to, it's gonna get me emotional. Amanda went to a praying church, y'all. She went back home and she said to her church, we've got to pray for this girl that I grew up with. She's out in LA, she's lost her doggone mind. She doesn't know what's up or down or left or right. And she needs Jesus right now. So they start praying for her. For me. As they're praying for me, I don't know that they're doing this, right? They're 2,000 miles away. As they're praying for me, my life in LA gets worse and worse and worse. I get a big breakup, I lose an agent, then I got an amazing agent. My life was just like this, and I was so miserable. I was coming to the end of myself. And then one night, as God would have it, I went to a party at a movie star's house. And there's all these beautiful, famous people there, and it's New Year's Eve. And I look out over the people, and all of a sudden it looks like a big room like this, and it was so supernatural that it looked like someone took a curtain, pulled back the curtain, and all I saw all around the room was evil. God let me see into the supernatural. I don't have words for what I saw. The evil that was literally like sucking on people's heads and crawling the walls. I get the chills every time I talk about this. It was the most evil I'd ever seen in my life. And so I just back up into the room and I just say, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I didn't know what else to do. And I'm in this party. I'm stuck up on Mulholland Drive. There's no way to get home. It's New Year's Eve. It took forever. I have to call for a taxi, all these things. But I get back home to my apartment in Beverly Hills. Totally, I have no context for what just happened to me at that party. And that night, God and I had one big holy showdown. It was on between the two of us. I'm just pacing. I had never seen this before, the way that I grew up. I'm just pacing, yelling at the Lord. I don't like you. What about my brother? You're boring. The last thing I ever want to do is be like a good little church singer. None of this was registering with me. And I'm just pacing like a crazy person in my room. And then at one point, I can't even explain it. All of a sudden, it's like the Spirit, it's like a bucket, was poured over my head. And the Spirit of God fell on me. And I couldn't even stand. I got face down in that place and just started repenting and confessing my sins. Not that I'd ever seen anybody do that before. And the Lord, that stronghold that I had in my heart, that I couldn't take out if I had wanted to. He just took it. And I was filled with the fire and the love of God. I was filled with hope about my brother. That's no problem for God. I was filled with a hope for my family that he would rescue and save them. And in that very moment, I felt such a strong identity, even within the kingdom, that I had a place and I had a calling. So at that point, it's the middle of the night. I'm thinking, who's my age that's up that wouldn't mind me calling them? So I call Amanda. And I said, Amanda, you wouldn't believe what happened to me tonight. And she said, Jamie, we were having an all-night prayer meeting at our church tonight. We were praying down heaven for you. 2,000 miles away, you guys. I hadn't talked to her in months. That is the power of intercession. That is the power of our prayers. That is the power of the love of God, the way that he will go after prodigals in any way. Tonight, I really want to encourage you, if you have prodigals in your life, if your own life is not in a certain spot where you think it should be, or if you have been praying for people for years and years and years, do not give up. Let's go back to our prodigal priest and see what's going on with him. That censer that was on the altar that he's not supposed to take off of the altar is like a prayer. It was like the incense. It was the morning and the evening incense. The morning and the evening prayers went with the incense. Aaron took it, as Moses said, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And behold, the plague had already begun among the people. He went all by himself this time. And he put on the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Just like people prayed for me the night that I came back to the Lord, thousands of miles away from each other, that one prayer completely changed my life. Aaron, who had been a failure in front, the Lord isn't mincing words here. He put it in the Bible, okay? Epic failure within his priesthood, first chance he gets. But he goes into the middle of the plague with nothing but a prayer in his hand, all by himself. God himself is causing this plague to come down. He has one prayer and a belief that God has made a promise to his people and he won't destroy them completely. And with that prayer in his hand, he was able to stand between the dead and the living. We're going to pray at the end of this. And I want to encourage you that you, with your prayers, just you, or in a group, you have the ability through the Spirit of God to stand between the dead and the living. So this is a great moment between God and Aaron. Now it's settled between God and Aaron. There was an exchange there. But let's get back to the people. Meanwhile, back with the people. The very next day, the people came up against Aaron again about his leadership. God and Aaron had a good exchange. God knows that Aaron is serious about his priesthood now, but the people aren't still convinced. So God says, everybody take a staff, and the staff of the man whom I choose shall sprout. This I will make to cease from me the grumblings of the people of Israel, which they grumble against you. And on the next day, Moses went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the staff of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and produced blossoms, and it bore ripe almonds. And Yahweh said to Moses, put back the staff of Aaron before the testimony to be kept as a sign. When God established Aaron as the priest once and for all, he did a miracle, because there were 4 different seasons on that staff. He caused it to bud, he caused it to flower, and he caused it to bear fruit, all in one thing. And do you know what they did with that staff? They put it in the ark of the testimony. Everywhere the people of Israel went, they had that presence of God and the ark of the testimony. The fact that God gave Aaron a second chance, the fact that God trusted him with the priesthood and gave him back the calling he was always meant to do, In a sense, that's God's testimony. God's the one who said, I can establish Aaron. I can teach him what to do. I can even cause the people to respect him and follow him. So not only did God give Aaron a second chance, he established his calling. So for me, I come back to the Lord and I'm in LA. And God says to me, serve me. Within 2 weeks, I am on a worship team. I to this day have no idea how. I'd only gone to that church 1 week. All of a sudden, I'm on a worship team. All of a sudden, 3 different people are mentoring me. This is in LA. All of a sudden, I'm going on a mission trip to Kenya. God starts using me whenever I would say yes, and I just kept saying yes. And he kept giving me all these opportunities, one after another. And then God says, I actually want you to go all the way back to Chicago. And I want you to leave everything, sell everything, follow me, and go to that church in Chicago that was praying for you. So I sell all my fancy stuff. I used eBay. I sold all these handbags and shoes and everything I had. I go back to Chicago and I start living off of my savings and going to this church in Chicago, this little bitty urban church that I loved so much. And boy, did they raise me up. They taught me how to do everything. It was the day of small beginnings at that church. And for those of you in ministry, I did everything. I cleaned the toilets. I sang in the choir. I was with the babies. I learned how to do everything when I was at that church. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I had there. And after a good measure of time, I realized I want to spend the rest of my life in the house of the Lord. I just want to serve Jesus for the rest of my life. And so I kept following the thread of everything God kept asking me to do. And I ended up going to Moody Bible Institute. I thought, okay, I'll get equipped for ministry. I don't know yet what God wants me to do, but a Bible degree goes a long way, right? And even as a singer, I felt the Lord saying to me, I know you love me and you've come back from LA, but for anybody who's a prodigal or has been a prodigal or knows prodigals, there's a little bit of character reformation we need to do. So I was mentored and my church staff was incredible. They took me under their wing, taught me how to be a woman of God. And I realized God said, you could go to school for music. But he said, why don't you learn about me and I'll give you something to sing about. So I go to Moody Bible Institute, and I get my Bible and my theology degree, and the first day at Moody Bible Institute was so funny. I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, one of these things is not like the other one. Oh, right, it's totally me. Everyone there, very conservative, and they're all 18, and they want to, because they should be, right? And they want to get married by 19, and here I am, 29 and single. They all looked like they were going to church on the first day of school. I'm in pink pants with sparkly shoes. I was still so LA, right? And I just stick out like a sore thumb, and I'm thinking, I don't know how this Moody degree is going to go, right? But I'm just going to say yes and follow the Lord. Best decision I've ever made. God was so sweet to me. I had the time of my life at Moody Bible Institute. They put the Word of God in me, which washed the world out of me. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So then we get to my junior and senior year. Just like God had a calling for Aaron, I want you to lead my people, and I want you to head up the priesthood. I come to the Lord between my junior and senior year at Moody, and I say, okay, God, this big dramatic story of you bringing me back to you, right? And now what is it that you want me to do? And this was the phrase, I love that we've got Undivided Heart as our theme tonight, or for the whole weekend. This was the phrase that stuck out to me. I was doing worship for a song and rehearsing, and the song and the line in the song, Hosanna, where she says, break my heart for what breaks yours. I thought, that's it. I have followed my own heart, Lord, and it was a disaster. So God, speak to me. I spent the whole summer, I started doing a biblical theology of what breaks God's heart. And there are so many things that break God's heart. This is what God chose to reveal to me that summer when I asked him this question. It only took till Genesis 12. Break my heart for what breaks yours. What breaks your heart, God? I get to Genesis 12, 1-3. Now Yahweh said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That was a light bulb that went off over my head. I thought, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed through Abram. God made a covenant with a people. If I'm looking for what breaks God's heart, right? We have that example in the covenant that we make. It's supposed to be one person, right? For life, and you don't give up on that covenant. I had never thought about the fact that God had married himself to a people or made a covenant with them. It had never occurred to me. So what I'm going to do right now, there are better examples of this. I'm just going to show you the acts, as I'm doing a biblical theology through the summer, I'm going to show you the verses that influenced me to show God's heart for his people, what breaks his heart. So then Genesis 17:8. And I, Yahweh, will give you Abraham and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. You know, I thought about this today as I was writing through my notes. So we are in Georgia, right? Not so far. Somebody said hop, skip, and a jump today. That was really cute at lunch. We're a hop, skip, and a jump from Atlanta. Now, I want to see you raise your hands. How many of you have either read or seen Gone with the Wind? Well, I am from the north, but my mom is from the south. So I think I was about 12 years old the first time I read Gone with the Wind, and then when I finished the whole book, my mom let me see the movie. And there's a scene that I think, like even here in Georgia, so many thousands of miles away from Israel, we can identify with that concept of land. Do you know the line I'm going to say? Where he says, you know, something like Katie Scarlett, land is the only thing worth living for. It's the only thing worth fighting for. Is that how it goes? The only thing worth dying for. Even the land mattered. If we can identify over here in the West with how much land means to us, God not only covenanted himself to his people, but he said, I've chosen a home for you, as it were a home for us. That land matters to him, and it matters that his people are in it. So then I keep following the traces. I look at the book of Hosea. Yes, you can think about prodigals, and that's fine. You can apply that metaphorically. But it was the first time I ever read the book of Hosea about the fact that God would actually sort of almost destroy Hosea's life as a living metaphor for how much he loves his people and will not give up on them. And then another one, Jeremiah 31, the new covenant stood out to me in a way that I had never seen before. Thus says Yahweh, who gives the sun for light by day and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. If this fixed order departs from before me, declares the Lord, then shall the offspring of Israel cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus says the Lord, if the heavens can be measured and the foundations of the earth below can be explored, then I will cast off all the offspring of Israel for all that they have done, declared the Lord. And I thought to myself, I'm following this theme. What breaks God's heart? What is on God's mind? What is his heart? Well, the sun got up this morning and the moon's going to come up tonight. He hasn't cast off his people. He made a covenant and he sticks to it. So, like a good Gentile, okay, I'm not Jewish like at all. Polish sausage for breakfast over here, okay, Polish. My dad at Christmas is practically Buddy the Elf. So we are very, very Gentile, and I love it. Something I want to say too is my father-in-law, when he's talked about this before, he says, you know, God must really love the Gentiles because he made a whole lot of them. So be encouraged by that tonight. But I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get to the New Testament and everything changes, right? Oh my word, the New Testament was worse. So I looked at the Jewishness of the gospel. Again, I'm looking through this lens of break my heart for what breaks yours. I'm looking at God making a covenant with a people, and I get to the Jewishness of the gospel, which I had never noticed before. All those names that are kind of funny and you're like trying to get your way through them. In Matthew 1, that is a list of miracle, 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 miracle. That is a list of God's faithfulness, his faithfulness, his faithfulness, and some more faithfulness. I realized that 99% of the Bible and all of these stories were Jewish, and that the Gentiles who were included there's a whole other word for them. It's called ge'er. There were people who, in Hebrew, there were people who had collected themselves and clung to Israel. And these are the stories that God includes. I look at John the Baptist, circumcised. Jesus, circumcised. Jesus, he keeps all the feasts of the Lord. You know, names and things matter, what we label things. And I always thought they were the Jewish feasts, but that's actually not their name. That's not what God calls them. They're his feasts. The feasts of the Lord, or the feasts of Yahweh. And then I really looked at Luke 2, that the Lord's Supper is actually the Lord's Seder. It's a Passover Seder. And that it goes back to the new covenant. When he talks about making a new covenant in my blood, he's talking about Jeremiah 31, the new covenant where he says, I will never cast off my people. They will never cease to be a nation before me. So God is downloading his heart for his people to me in a way that I had never seen before. So then I look at For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. I had never even thought about going to the Jewish people. Or how about Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth? Most missions models today, we start at the ends of the earth. It never occurred to me to start with Israel, that God actually had a plan. So I keep moving through the New Testament. Paul, arguably the greatest Christian who ever lived, for I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from the Messiah for the sake of my brothers, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. And even Jesus himself, he recognizes failures of Israel. He's very realistic about who they are and where they're at. He laments over Jerusalem. When he looks out over Jerusalem, he weeps and talks about how he wishes he could gather them to himself. I had never even considered Jerusalem. I had sure never wept over it. If we want to be like Jesus, we're going to look at Jerusalem and weep and long for them to come back to him. He prophesies the coming salvation of Israel, and he promised that his return is attached to their revival and salvation. But this isn't all about that. Just as God gave promises to the people of Israel, he also promised the Gentiles blessing when we align with his heart and his mission for the Jewish people. Recently, when I was leading a prayer meeting, it occurred to me the first time this famous psalm, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may they be secure who love you." What's interesting is it doesn't say the parallelism breaks. It doesn't say pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may Jerusalem be secure. What it says is pray for the peace of Jerusalem, may they be secure who love you. Meaning, we get a promise of security when we will pray for Israel's peace. When we pray for Israel's peace, God gives us peace. When we bless Israel, God blesses us. Now, why did he make these things up? I don't know. I don't know why he made this system. I just know that he does, and I know and I've seen it in action that it works. So, for the Gentiles, all of us, I think, is there anyone who's Jewish in this room? Yeah. So for all of us in this room, there is a Gentile Hall of Fame in the Bible. Has anybody ever said that to you? Have you ever thought about that? There is a Gentile Hall of Fame. There's something that God does when we will humble ourselves, when we will just submit to his plan, whether we understand it fully or not, when we will bless his people and make it a part of our lives and our missions, whatever those lives and missions are, he will honor. I look at Ruth. I won't go through all of this for the sake of time. But Ruth is what you would call a ge'er. She clung to the people of God just as much as she clung to the God of Israel. She would do anything. She said, your people will be my people and your God will be my God. You know, we say that a lot at weddings. When I said it at mine, and then I was off to Israel. My husband is Jewish, Israeli, born in the land, believer. His family has been in ministry for 50 years in the land. And on that day, it was so revelatory for me. Wow, I'm not going to just, your God is my God. I'm going to make your people my people. This is the plan of God. This is the one new man. We are the branches that have been added on, like Romans 9 through 11 talks about, to the Jewish tree. So Ruth, God puts her in the Bible, and she ends up being in the line of the Messiah because she came after his people and clung to them and clung to him. This one takes a bit of unpacking. I'm going to move quickly. If you have questions about this later, I'd love to talk about it. The story of the Syrophoenician woman, she comes to Jesus and she asks him for a healing for her daughter. And God says one of the most difficult things in the New Testament. He literally says to her, shall I give to a dog and have the children go starving? So the first time I read through that, as I have this context in mind, I thought to myself, did Jesus just say, like, I'm Gentile, did he just call her a dog? Did he just say that he prefers his people? Like, I was so offended by this passage. And it actually took me a couple of years of wrestling to work this one out. And what I understood is, like many things in life, God was offending her mind to reveal her heart. Is Jesus calling her a dog? Certainly not. Absolutely not. What he's doing is asking her, are you trying to steal from my brothers and sisters? And even with a little bit of an insulting tone, she is completely humble. She loves and blesses family. She says, absolutely not. Can you imagine having this kind of an attitude in this day and age? For someone to say, Jesus himself to say something that's seemingly offensive to you, what does she say to him? I would never steal from your children. I know your plan. I'll take the crumbs under the table. I mean, even with the Holy Spirit in me, I'm pretty sassy. I don't think I would react like that. God is so honored by her humility and by her submission to his plan that she chooses not to be offended. He offended her mind and revealed her heart, and her heart was full of love and humility. So what does he do? He does the healing that she asked for, and we are still talking about her today. Across the board, humility and obedience with the Lord will always be rewarded. And then a fun one, arguably speaking, Cornelius has traditionally been accepted as the first Gentile to come to faith in Acts 10. And look who God is choosing. He's choosing Ruth. She clings to his people and she clings to him, and he says, I can bring the Messiah through you. That wasn't what I said I was going to do, but I'll do it. And then we get to the Syrophoenician woman, not offended at all, believes in the goodness of God, humbles herself, and he does what she asks and makes her biblically famous. Was there anything more epic than that? And then we get to Cornelius. He was a devout man. He gave money to the Jewish people. He knew all their customs and all their laws, and he was humble toward them. And he ends up being made famous. He comes to faith, and so does his entire family. Arguably the first Gentile that got to come into that Jewish root. So, what does that look like today? We see Cornelius, we see Ruth, we see the Syrophoenician woman. But it's an interesting time to love Israel. It's a very difficult time to love Israel. It's a very difficult time to be Israel. I'm an Israeli citizen now. My husband and I served for 11 years in full-time ministry in Israel, in downtown Jerusalem. So I speak Hebrew. Both my children were born in Jerusalem. My first son was born in a bomb shelter. There were rockets overhead from Gaza for our Israeli wedding party. It takes courage to go after God's heart for Israel. So what does that look like practically? I want to give you a visual. Right after October 7th, we were in a place where there were believers, but they were utterly silent. So 1 week goes by, nobody prays for Israel or even mentions it. We're up half the night, like this. Every time the phone buzzes, we're looking to see if someone we know has died. All of our friends are being called up to go into Gaza, called into the reserves. We were new to Kentucky. We'd been there for like 3 months. And we have no community. We don't have a church. We don't really know anybody. We have no influence. We have no favor. We hadn't proven ourselves in ministry. Nothing. We had nothing and no one. But week 3 goes by, silence where we live. Week 4 goes by, silence where we live. I start having Holocaust nightmares. Worried that somebody's going to see the little Israeli flag on the front of our little house and come and drag us off. Week 5, and there's silence. And I'm starting to get angry, and I'm starting to get scared. And those are 2 emotions I don't usually feel. Even in Israel, I didn't get scared. I felt the call of God in my life. But this silence was crushing. And I heard God say, don't be mad. If they don't know how to do this, you do it. You're Israeli, you do it. And I'm thinking, do what? And the Lord said, do a prayer vigil. And I'm thinking, I don't belong to a church yet. We're brand new here. How am I going to do a prayer vigil? So then I start knocking on doors, trying to get a space to just do a prayer vigil for the hostages. That's all I wanted. And everybody kept saying no. Couldn't get a prayer vigil for the hostages anywhere. So God said, well, you've got a big front yard. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I'm having Holocaust nightmares. Remember that part? You want me to just advertise, woohoo, Israelis live over here, come and get us, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, we have no community, no backup, nothing. I am what? You know what I mean? I was like, absolutely not, Lord. I've answered a lot of calls. I don't know about this one. And so my husband said, babe, if the Lord put it on your heart, go for it. So I had seen online that people had done this thing with chairs where they put out 240 chairs for the hostages, and they put posters on each and every one so you felt the weight of how many were there. So I said, okay, we're on a ministry budget and we're students. How are we going to do this? So we couldn't afford 240 chairs, so we got 120. And we put the pictures on the front and the back. And by the way, we don't really know anybody either. So like, I want to inspire you too, if you're like, how could I stand for Israel? Again, no church, no budget, no connections, nothing. In fact, my team was me and my 2-year-old. So it was like, I was stopping to do everything I was doing, just snack time, this and that, and I'm trying to pull off some kind of a prayer vigil. We weren't allowed to use public messaging. We were shut down in every single way. And I thought, you know what? We're just gonna put the chairs out and see what happens. So 5 days later, it was finally approved that we could put the chairs in our front lawn. And we set out 120 chairs. This is my little Joseph, putting one of his teddy bears on the picture of next to a hostage who was a child. And this is the empty Shabbat table that we put with hostages' pictures around it. And that day, over 400 people came through. We emailed like the 10 people we knew. People kept coming how did you even know this is happening today? Well, this person, I don't know them. This person, I don't know them either. This person, I have no idea. All these people came that day, walked through respectfully, and prayed for the hostages. If you think that you don't have influence, or you don't have the money, or you don't have a team, we didn't have any of that. And quite frankly, I'm going to be very honest with you, I was afraid. We did that, and we have slept like babies ever since. No more fear. God cast that out. I want to inspire you that if God calls you to come along Israel, just do it. And I want to end with one more story. We're almost done. I want to inspire you that on October 7th, one of the darkest days we've had, more people died on October 7th than we've had those kinds of numbers since the Holocaust itself. 1,000 people were killed that day. And then hostages were taken into Gaza. And we felt like, okay, this is it. You know, it's the time of Jacob's trouble. What are we entering into? How is this happening again when we have the Israeli Defense Force? The slogan is never again. How is this happening again? And it can look like it's almost impossible to follow after God in this thing. There's so many things we're going to talk about this weekend. But in this thing, will you bless my people? Will you be humble and will you be courageous? I want to tell you a miracle story from October 7th that didn't make the news. But this is kingdom news. So in Israel, there's only one women's conference. And it's one day a year. And they started it about 8 years ago. I know the founders, they're dear friends of mine, Chaya and Norma. And they had a dream to get anybody and everybody from the land who's believers, everybody, whether they're Arabs, whether they're Russians, whether after the war, lots of Ukrainians. I mean, there's so many languages going on around that place. It's beautiful. It's the whole cross-section of everybody who is in Israel. And there's tons of translation going on. And for the first few years that they did this conference, there was like maybe 100, 200 people. But the years of COVID, it was like 2021, I think it was. We weren't allowed to assemble. I think a lot of those same things were in place here in America. And so they thought, well, we can't have the conference. But then it was, well, you can have 50 people together. So they thought, well, we usually have about 150 people together anyway. So we're going to split it up into 3. We'll do one up north, one in the middle in Jerusalem, and one down south. So the one up north was near the Galilee, the one in the middle in Jerusalem. I got to lead worship for that one. And then the one that was in the south, they wanted it to be near the border of Gaza to encourage the women down there because their lives were so unutterably difficult day after day. So they started going to all these kibbutzim to see farms in the south of Israel, trying to see who would let us host this. But they were very honest. We're Jewish, but we believe Jesus is the Messiah. Like, this is going to be messianic. We're going to call him Yeshua, and we're going to sing and pray in the name of Yeshua. And so kibbutz after kibbutz after kibbutz in the south said, no, 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 no. So we're all on a prayer chain. We're all praying, kind of like this conference as well. We're all praying, God, open up a place in the south. Open up a place in the south. So finally, this tiny little kibbutz called Kibbutz Nir Am said, yes, you can have your conference. We believe in Yeshua. Yes. We think we're still Jewish, even though we believe in Yeshua. Yes. Just give us your money. You can do whatever you want. They're like, great. We'll come. Let's do it. So the conference goes on, and there's about 50 women there, and they're doing worship, and all of a sudden, the lights go out and the power goes off in the room as they're doing worship. And they're thinking, there's just been so much warfare to do anything in the south. How can we not just pull off this one small conference? And so one of the ladies on the worship team, who is a wild character, I love her. She has a very prophetic gifting. And she says, let's go around the room and start doing like a Jericho march. And everybody's thinking, it's not that bad that the lights are off. I don't think we need to do a Jericho march. But they're like, okay, we'll go around and do that Jericho march. And then they said, okay, I feel like we are supposed to pray right now that God will raise up an army of women in the south. So the power has gone out, and they start calling down heaven for an army of women to be raised up in the south of Israel at Kibbutz Nir Am. So the conference is great. They laugh later. A few minutes later, the power came back on. Everything's fine. Wasn't that funny, silly story, right? And on October 7th, 2023, 2 years later, everybody's getting these mixed messages. Everything is chaos in Israel. And there's this woman who was the overseer of the security that early morning on Shabbat. It was a holiday. It was Simchat Torah at the end of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And half the people are gone. That's why they've got like a girl on watch. And she's there by herself. And she's getting all these reports that something's going on, but she doesn't know what. So she calls her commander. What should I do? He says, it's all fine. Don't worry about it. Sit tight till we give you orders. But this is what I love. She said, something told me he was wrong. Now, she's not a believer at all. Religious Jewish girl. She said, something told me he was wrong. And then she said, something told me to sound the alarm. I mean, you have to understand, they have to use this with caution. In Gaza, there's always stuff happening. So you can't cry wolf every other minute, right? You can't freak out. But she said, something told me, get everybody to the posts around the perimeter fence. And then something told me to shut off the power. Now, if they shut off the power, that means everybody in their bomb shelters has no air and no light, and it is hot in the south of Israel. Well, she said, I just think we're supposed to cut all the power, and that's not protocol, but she did. Kibbutz Nir Am fought off terrorists for 12 hours straight because they were the only kibbutz in the south of Israel who had everybody around, and because the power was off, they couldn't hijack and jimmy rig the electric gates for the perimeter fence to come open. Kibbutz Nir Am was the only place in Israel on that day where no one died. Not one person. And who was the person who rescued them? One warrior woman. 2 years before that, they prayed, God, when our power went out, God, I pray that you would raise up an army of women who are warriors. And on October 7th, he answered. You can look up her name, Inbal Lieberman. You can look, and in the story, they'll say, oh, she saved the whole kibbutz, and oh, it's so great. But they don't know the God story behind the story. That a group of women, just like this, got together and prayed, heard from the Lord, and 2 years later, the only place with no casualties was the place where they prayed. But tonight, we are an army of women in this room. Amen? We have the power of the Spirit of God living inside of us. And something I love as well, something I love when you're thinking about how could I bless Israel? What could I do? I think it, who has me on the prayer call. It could be anybody, it doesn't have to be him. I'm just saying she made space and she made a place to make sure we educate and advocate the heart of God. and the plan of God. And if we come in line with his plan, there is this mutual blessing, there is this mutual peace, and there's this mutual power when we align with God's heart. When our heart breaks for what breaks his. He is after the prodigal. He came after me. For Jesus loved the whole world that he gave his son. Also, he said one day, all of Israel will be saved. And he's not coming back until they are. So, every Friday night on Shabbat, in every synagogue across the world, they close with the Aaronic benediction. And recently, Carrie Job made it very popular, the song, The Blessing. But they end every service with the Aaronic benediction, and they face east. They face Israel. So tonight, I'm going to invite you to turn around and face the back of the room, because that way is Israel. And I'm going to ask you or invite you to please raise your hands as if you were priests who had the power to move the heart of God, because you do. And I am going to sing. But we're all going to sing in our hearts. We're going to finish in English. But we are going to declare over Israel tonight that God is faithful, that God is covenanted to them, that he is for them, he is not against them, that he has a plan for them. And it is our job as Gentiles to call them to jealousy for their Messiah. God, tonight we come in line with your plan and your order. We don't always understand it, God. Your ways are not our ways. Your thoughts are not our thoughts, Abba. They're higher. Tonight, God, we come in alignment with your will and over a weary Israel, Abba. We sing the blessing that you gave your prodigal priest, Aaron, thousands of years ago to speak over them. Tonight, God, we speak blessing and not cursing. Tonight, God, we speak the love of a father who will not relent until the prodigal comes home. Tonight, God, we look at your firstborn son and we say, we bless you as the family of God. You are so big. You have gifts for all of your children. There is no need for jealousy, God, in your kingdom. You have given each of us mighty gifts, Lord, but you have called your people to be a light to the nations. And we declare that over them. As Shabbat comes in, Abba, we pray your blessing over your people. Again, that you gave your prodigal priest Aaron. We come in alignment with you tonight.